Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the people management platform for hospitality teams. With its intuitive drag-and-drop rota planner and built-in budgeting tools, RotaCloud users spend an average of 66% less time on staffing-related admin, leaving them with more time to spend with their customers, train staff, or simply take a well-earned break. Head over to rotacloud.com/Phil to explore RotaCloud's full range of tools and features and sign up for your 30-day free trial. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Natalie Tait, People Director at those wondrous hospitality disruptors, Artfarm. Coming up on today's show, Natalie tells us how to be successful at Artfarm.
If you can manage ambiguity, you'll get on really well here.
Phil loses his focus.
Head's already in the pub.
And Natalie recounts a hellish moment of terror.
And I'm not being dramatic to say this, I genuinely thought I was going to die.
All that and so much more as we chat through Natalie's epic journey so far. Natalie is one of my oldest hospitality mates, and so I was more than thrilled when she invited me to Artfarm head office in London to chew the fat over her life and career. And what a wonderful career she is carving out for herself. But as my last preview snippet might allude to, it's a story that throws up way more than just a gentle, focused stroll to where she is now. A huge thank you to Natalie for being so open throughout. One final thing before we get into it, and I know I go on about this, but if you can take 2 seconds to subscribe to the show and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, it really makes a huge difference. Enjoy. And a massive Hospitality Meets welcome to Natalie Tait. Forgot who you were there for a second.
It's been so long, Phil. I've known you forever. It's like, who is she? Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome. How are you?
I'm really well, actually. I'm really happy that the sun is shining, and as we were chatting before, just being out in London on a Friday and seeing people spilling out of pubs and, you know, just enjoying the sunshine is brilliant, because this summer's been... It was kind of okay, and then it just had a black cloud over us for a little while.
Yeah.
So I'm super.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes.
You okay?
Yeah, great. Thanks for asking. I don't think anybody normally asks me that back.
Yeah. It should. It's Hospitality 101, Phil, isn't it? Like, how are you?
Absolutely.
Very good.
Yeah, so just tell the world who you are and what you do.
Okay. So I am the People Director, now soon to be Senior Director of People, at Artfarm. So I look after... Well, when I started a couple of years ago, I looked after about 220 people. We're now about 600 people, which I'm sure we'll go into. But we've got a really interesting business owned by Howes & Worth, which is an art gallerist, essentially. And we're sort of the sister business to Howes & Worth. Very, very different businesses, as I'm sure you can imagine. But actually on a consumer level, work really, really closely. Art, food, drink, all just kind of work. So I look after the whole people function here.
Yeah, and well, I mean, Artfarm is definitely one of the more eclectic names that's out there. Yeah. But art on one side, I'm guessing there's a farm involved somewhere.
Exactly, and the name Artfarm sort of came up from Ivan and Manuela, who are our owners, walking in Somerset on their farm. And that's really what the true essence of Artfarm is. It's bringing art to the masses, essentially, doing things different with art, utilising it in hospitality business in a different way, not just simply hanging art on the wall. But on the farm side of things, we have a farm. We rear our own cattle, we utilise that cattle in our restaurants, we have a farm shop, soon to be 2 farm shops, one opening in London in the next in November. So it's about that. It's about where food is grown and how we eat food and enjoy food at various different levels and in different environments as well. Yeah. You know, in Scotland, Los Angeles, Somerset, London, all very, very different.
Wow. Yeah.
So it is about the fusing of all of these wonderful things into an enjoyable time, really.
Hospitality experience.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll probably get into it because you have an eclectic mix of businesses for sure.
Yeah.
And I love that. But it's almost like you're not conforming to what the world tells you to do. You're kind of creating your own space.
Yeah. And it's all about place. For Ivan, Manuela, you and our CEO, all of us, you know, it's it of course starts with them. It's all about the place and the reason and the why. And it's not just about rapid expansion, and there is expansion there, and it's exciting, and there's a lot going on, but we're not going to just blindly open something that doesn't make sense for the place, the location, the environment, the people, the proximity to a gallery, the art and culture. It all feeds in. And you tone it up and dial it down, depending on the place. But then when we are there, it's about enhancing that community. So it's one of our core values is that we enhance communities.
Right.
And not just financially, it's about really making a difference in that community. We do it a lot in Scotland, and we find different ways of doing it in other places.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hugely eclectic, and we want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
It will always be that way.
Yeah, I love that.
No,
yeah,
it's cool.
Cool. Well, I mean, obviously, before you got here,
Uh-huh.
there's a bit of a backstory as
Yes.
to how you ended up here.
Always.
So take us all the way back to the beginning
All the way
of
back.
your career / life /
Yeah.
whatever
Exactly.
makes sense.
I
How
was
did
born.
you get into? Yes, yeah, and then
I had to practice some words. No, it's funny actually because when we talked about doing this podcast, I thought, that sounds like good fun, and really wanted to support and get involved. And
But.
I randomly clicked on another one of your podcasts. It's a slight detour here, and it was Sally Beck from Royal Lancaster.
Yeah.
This is Royal Lancaster. I mean, she's a great, person in our industry, and totally admire what she's doing, especially with the hoteliers charter and everything else. All great. But it's funny how she's from Scunthorpe, as am I.
Yeah.
I felt like, reaching out to her and going, hey, do you know such and such? Because it really is a small
What
town.
What generation are you in Scunthorpe?
Yeah, exactly. So, but I was born and grew up in Scunthorpe. So until I was 19.
Right.
And I didn't particularly perform very well at school. Didn't really like it. I liked some things, but I didn't like the educational system. And it just wasn't really for me. So I did okay. I was kind of like just average at everything. Classic CD kind of, results.
Was that because it just wasn't, you weren't engaged with it?
Yeah, I think it just, school is a really tricky thing because you kind of, and I see it now, and I see people that can't get onto a creative course because they haven't got a GCSE in maths and English. And I just think there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
Like how can you translate that? My niece has got Asperger's.
Right.
Quite a heavy dose of Asperger's. And she loves photography, and she's a talented photographer, but couldn't get onto. She has been in college. She's 20. She's been in college for years trying to get onto a course, resitting GCSEs because that's what the educational system tells you.
Yeah.
I mean, my situation, I kind of scrape by, but I really loved the creative. So home economics, art, languages. I loved all of that.
Yeah.
But there wasn't enough of that in school when I was growing up to really at that point know what I could do and what a good career might be for me, because all of the career chat was about, sort of academic stuff, and I went to a normal comprehensive school. We're never going to be doctors, but, it was all about just normal run-of-the-mill educational, sort of onward educational and then careers. So I sort of got through school, and I said this to my niece actually, just get through it. Just get your head down, get through it, because if you don't enjoy it, it will end soon.
It's the same
You're not
principle.
there forever.
No, indeed. Same principle as when you are learning to drive and you pass your test.
Yeah.
Like that's when you really start learning, right?
Then you've got problems. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You haven't got somebody next to you on the break.
Everybody's useless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if anything, you're protected and you've got everything. But so I did slightly better on my GCSEs than I thought, which was remarkable. And it then spurred me to go and enrol in college. I picked the wrong subject. I enrolled in college, but at the same time got myself a job in a shop. And then as soon as I turned 18, I got a job in a pub.
Right.
And at the same time as that, the shop that I was working in, I increased my hours there. It was kind of like an electrical store, like Curry's type thing. I think it was Comet or something it was called at the time.
Oh, God, I remember them.
Comet, yeah, exactly. So
Showing
I used
your
to
age
walk
now.
around selling people stuff that I had nothing about, but basically position myself so I could read the card behind the appliance and just tell them what was on the card, and they thought that was my knowledge. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, it's Dolby surround sound. They were like, what's that? I said, don't know, it's just here.
Yeah. That was the first time that you're getting the opportunity to learn how to blag.
Yes, exactly. And here we are.
Yeah.
But I found myself bunking off college to go to work because I just loved it. And my mum said to me, just go to work, Natalie, it's okay. You know, you've given it a go. We know you hate it. Just do that. If you genuinely want to work hard, then don't go to college. So I dropped out of college, and it was the best decision I ever made at that time.
Yeah.
And then I got to know somebody that worked in the pub. She'd been working in London. I came down for the weekend, and I say never went back. I came back the weekend following, found myself a flat in the Loot newspaper, as you did back then. Got myself a job in Yates's in Leicester Square.
What is a newspaper?
Yes, exactly. I bought it from the shop. And I bought the travel card from the shop as well, which is remarkable. I got myself a job immediately in Yates's in Leicester Square, and I haven't been back. I do keep in touch with my family and go back up for weekends, and that's it.
I thought you hadn't been back to the Yates's in Leicester Square.
I haven't either. Both things I have never returned to. But no, so then I've stayed in London, and now I've been in London more than I was anywhere else. So I've been in London for 21 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So instant love then, really, was it?
I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
It was for me. I knew the speed at which people walk in tube stations. I thought, this is a bit of me. You know, I've got energy. I want to do something. This is lively. I'd never seen anything like this before. I'd never seen people of different race. I'd never different colours and the way that people dressed, and I'd never seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was brilliant.
Wide-eyed.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I thought I want to get amongst this and get to know some of these people. And hospitality was that vehicle for me. So literally working ground up, then started working in a pub chain, got on a trainee managership, up to assistant manager, and you know I ran my first pub when I was 20, and the license was 21 and over. You know, before, back in the day when it was the license in the pub and your name above the door and everything else, you had to be 21 to be in this pub, and I was the manager, so we had to apply for the license to be 18 and over so I could manage it.
Right.
It's cool. It's brilliant.
Yeah, my God. I mean, and actually, if you think about it, maybe in the moment you don't really think about these things, but it's a monumental amount of responsibility to put on the shoulders of a 20-year-old.
Yeah, but because I'd worked and I wasn't in that educational system, I'd had to sort of fend for myself a bit. So it kind of propelled me forward in terms of growing up quite quickly, because it was only then, I'd been in London for a couple of years, that I then, one of the times that I went home to see my family, and I've been trying to keep in touch with school friends, but it wasn't really easy for me because we were just living different worlds in different lives. And I would come back talking about all these things that I've been doing in the business, and not complicated business speak, this is a pub, but they just look at me all like glazed over going, what are you talking about? You know, what's this? And so I quickly kind of spent more time and more attention in London and building a life here because it just suited me. And regrettably, you know, I speak to some friends on Facebook and we've been to a reunion and that kind of thing, but they're not my mates, you know, like, and that's the trade-off really.
Right.
In that sense.
Yeah. So running a pub at 20, how did it progress from there?
Well, I ran a couple of pubs, and it's quite fun actually, because when you're 20 and you run a pub, you often live above the pub. And one minute I was living in Wandsworth, the next I was in Camden, and you know I got to go to different places and you know experience living in different parts of London. And then I sort of settled down to rent a flat with a friend of mine, Joss, who's brilliant. I actually met him in the pub, of course you do. And then I was a manager of a couple of pubs. So we're getting serious now. Like, I'm manager of a couple of pubs. I'm sort of in my mid to late 20s. And it was only the fact that I had a back injury that was getting worse. And when you're that age, I don't think you often pay attention to your health very much. I certainly didn't. I was having a lovely time running pubs.
Indestructible, yeah.
Working hard, and I was indestructible. And it got to the point that I then actually did figure out what a chiropractor was and how they could help me. And I had some treatment, and they were like, look, this style of work on your feet, pounding, isn't good for the way that your body is and your structure. Maybe now we could, sort of fix that. But back then, it was just like, I'd consider getting a desk job if I were you, sort of thing. And I was like, oh my God.
Here's the solution.
How do I do that? I can't work in an office. Nobody will have me.
And I suppose, that must have been like something to behold, to contemplate at the time, because the only thing that you've kind of known and loved so far in your career has been this job. Yeah.
At that time, I also had blue hair, quite a few piercings. I was in Camden. I lived in a pub in Camden.
Yeah, you're not allowed to live in Camden without blue hair.
You have to fit in your early 20s.
Yeah.
I lived above the pub, so I was a millionaire. Like, they paid me an okay salary, but I had no bills. So I was just a Tony and Guy every weekend, getting something coloured or getting something pierced, or like that's just what you did.
Yeah.
Bought some throwaway clothing. So I thought, what can I do? And I applied for a job in recruitment, but in chef recruitment,
right?
Hospitality recruitment. And I had a couple of interviews. I went to one agency, which I won't name, but I hated it. It was literally like ring the bell if you got a placement, really salesy, and you had to wear a suit. And I always thought women in male kind of fitted suits just didn't. Now it's great, you can get really nice formal wear, but back then it was just like not great.
Right.
I just felt really corporate, really uncomfortable, a bit itchy. But then I did find a group of guys that had been in recruitment for ages, and I started working with them, and it worked. It was great. And they said, we want you to set up a new desk. They call it in recruitment.
That's right, I do. Yes.
You know all about this, don't you?
Indeed, yes.
Be careful what I say about recruiters. So
no, they're all out there. It's all right. We can take it.
All on the table. You've got an edit. So I set up this chef desk and did recruitment, and did that for about 2 or 3 years, and really enjoyed it. Met loads of chefs, and I focused on like contract catering. So I went to a lot of the business and industry outlets more inlets, aren't they, in London? Yeah. So UBS. It's
actually a really good way of summing that up, to be honest.
Just like the service themselves.
Yeah.
Deutsche Bank, some of their private, houses and stuff. I mean, it's amazing, and the quality of food.
I've got a cracking cookbook actually called The Hidden Chefs.
Really?
And it's all from the chefs who work in these kind of environments, because
I met some great people.
Their quality, the standard of the food is incredible.
Incredible. Yeah. Like, so good. And that's really what got my passion, or kept my passion growing for food and drink, because there's the pub game, and then there's learning this whole other side of cooking and service and everything else. So when the role came up at D&D London, the reason I wanted to take that role was because I was so nerdy on wanting to follow the careers of these people that I was placing, but the recruitment model is to say goodbye to them, keep in touch, but then kind of move on to the next thing. You said it. I mean, but
we're not all like that, by the way.
Exactly,
just
but
to be clear,
at the same time, I wanted to be involved, and then this job came up as recruitment and retention coordinator at D&D, and I thought, that's a bit of me, but at D&D, that's a bit posh. So no comment.
Moving on.
Moving on.
What did they have in their in the mix at the time? Because obviously they've had an expanding portfolio for quite a long time, and then obviously things have changed in the last couple of years.
They had about 25 restaurants, something like that. Right, so it was a decent size. It had gone from Conran into D&D.
Right.
They'd gone through the credit crunch, the recession.
I think they came out the back of that very positively. In terms of the upward trajectory after that.
They did, and they'd pivoted. They'd really shrunk down their head office overheads, and then they'd really sort of run a good business, and then they expanded on after that. And I started Butler's Wharf, looking after 4 restaurants along with Plateau and Dan. So it kind of this restaurant, can you go look at this, can you go look at that? And it was just such good fun, because I got the opportunity to create my own job, really. I worked with Carol Ken, she was brilliant, Liz Cave, these people that I still work with now. Saw Liz last week, she's amazing. And these people become your mentors. Like, I speak to Liz on a monthly basis. What do you think about this? It's just there. So the team that I work with, that HR team, were incredible.
Yeah.
And it was that HR team that said to me, I said, I've got too much on. I was there for a couple of years doing this recruitment retention role. And it was a compliment. They were giving me bigger remits, but there's only one of me at the time. And then I think somebody...
Have you managed to clone yourself?
Yeah, no.
There's two of you now.
You wouldn't, nobody would want that. Jesus. But somebody said to me, it might have even been Liz or maybe Ian Horrocks at the time, that said, oh, you could go do HR at the hotel. It was pre-opening and everything else. And I was like, really? And I thought about it and I met the team and I thought, oh, this is great. And I thought, well, I don't know anything about HR. And they said, well, but you're doing it. And I was like, no, because I thought it was all about the qualification. I didn't know what to do in a disciplinary situation, but I was doing everything else.
Yeah.
But you just didn't realise it at the time. I thought, no, I'm just a recruiter.
Yeah.
And then we launched South Place Hotel. It went from strength to strength, and that's when I really sort of...
That's when you and I met as well.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
In fact, I think it might have been my wife that got me the meeting with you, because I think she was working for a hedge fund around that area at the time.
Oh.
They were looking to do something at South Place. And I said, oh, put in a good word for me, because I'd love to get involved with that, because it's an absolute cracking hotel.
Yeah, it was a beautiful hotel.
And right up my alley in terms of that boutique-y kind of focus, luxury. Relaxed.
Design, beautiful, lovely. Great hotel.
Stunner of a place. I still remember our first meeting. Still remember it. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know details, but I remember it.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so that was your first foray. And actually, there's something that just sparked something in me there to just kind of ask you around, which was... To me, you just kind of nailed when good things happen when you're surrounded by good people. Because
completely.
Imagine the flip side of that is that you're going into a company whereby you don't have that level of support, or you don't have that camaraderie, or whatever it is, that little magic spice that just makes something work really well. Your career takes on a completely different angle, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely different. And you know, that now is the most important factor in my career in a job, let alone moving jobs. If I'm not sense checking the people that I'm working with and getting something fun out of that, then it's
like doing podcasts and stuff.
Exactly, wild. Then it's not working, is it?
Yeah.
So I think that's super important. I had the support. I worked with the best team of people. I learned about culture. I learned about when things are hard, that if you've got enough people swimming in one direction, then the one or two people swimming against you just feel very much outnumbered. Not in a cliquey, horrible way, but in a good, positive, cultural way. And that's how you get stuff done. And I looked at South Place Hotel. I talked with Suzanne Trout, who's the GM there for ages. We worked together. She was director of F&B when we started. We're just such a great team. She's now a dear friend, and we love her to bits. But at that time, we went through so much together, but we just had the best team. The best team. Yeah. It's like your baby, like even if I walk past it now, a little bit of something, a little lump in my throat, I'm like, oh, my baby. Yeah. First ever proper opening like that.
Yeah.
With hardship.
And what I also love about that is the fact that you kind of went in that with, from your own perspective, not much experience, but actually you got loads of experience because ultimately in a role like that, through a new opening, it's got to be about the people, right? I mean, it's got to be about your ability to be able to identify who's going to work well with who and why and all of that kind of stuff. And that's, the disciplinary things and all of the technical side of HR, you can't really learn until you're in it anyway.
Exactly. And I'd say that to anybody, because also going into that environment, you then, my eyes were wide again. I was looking at people that had done this before. A chap called Simon Willis, who's amazing marketeer, comms. He knew what he was talking about. And just to sit in that room with some of these people and not feel that you have to wing it or, just sort of witness them at work puts you on such a learning curve. I reference things I learned in those pre-opening meetings now, in terms of how to do things and what we should be doing. So, teams, the best. And also, not it's not what you don't know, because you know more. You don't always need other people to validate what it is that you do know. But you sort of working through that, then at the end of it, you can then look back and go, oh, I did know a little bit more than I thought at the time,
It sounds like, as well, that whole kind of scenario plays right into your character in the sense of, steep learning, but surrounded by people who give a monkeys, who are all pulling in the same direction. And as you say, when you're in that environment and everybody cares as much as you do about it, then you can't help but stride forward at pace because nobody's getting in your way.
No, and you're also allowed to be yourself. And every job since then, role, position, whatever, it's become more and more important to me and the people around me is to be yourself. Be allowed to be yourself, because that's when I was just talking to somebody this afternoon. That's when you get the best out of people. If you make them fall into your routine regime, sometimes with some hospitality businesses, you just put people's backs up. It's not natural. And if you're wearing the right clothing for you, if you're in the right environment, supported by people that have got your back and want to be around you, then you can do your best work, because it's a safety thing, isn't it? Comfort.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we forget that.
Yeah.
So it's important.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt, but a quick word to give special mention to our sponsor, RotaCloud, without whom this podcast wouldn't even be possible. With thousands of customers worldwide, RotaCloud is already saving businesses like yours hundreds of hours of staffing-related admin every year. It's been described by its users as everything from a lifesaver to an absolute no-brainer, with one customer even saying that they'd rather stick forks in their eyes than go back to doing their rotas the old-fashioned way. If you're ready to take the pain out of people management, I highly recommend heading over to rotacloud.com/Phil to sign up for your free 30-day trial and see how RotaCloud can benefit your business. Now let's get back to it.
So, how long were you there at South Place?
A few years. So altogether at D&D it was about 5 and a bit years, maybe 6 years altogether.
Right.
And then it got to the point that I think we all get to that and we saw a lot in that time, general management change. And I was very operational as well because we'd built it, we were, on the floor a little bit as well. It wasn't just classic HR. So I wanted to do something. I felt like the time was right for me to move on. It was one of those things that I probably have to reinvent myself or do all that work again. And I just really didn't want to do that. I just thought, I'm going to go see something different. And I was approached for a couple of jobs at the time, or I looked at a couple of jobs, and the role at Home House came up. At that time in my career, the other role was a group role that was sort of in between restaurants and sort of, supporting in that sense, which you know about. And but for me, I just thought, actually, I want to spend a little bit more time in the business, because I liked going to work in the property. So for Home House, for me, it was something new. It was private members. I remember this girl from Scunthorpe that just worked in pubs.
Yeah.
That has, started to see a bit more of the world. Yeah. Working in a private members club in Marylebone was like, wow, this is exciting. And it was the first HR director on paper, relatively quick. But I felt excited about it, and it was a similar size business to South Place in terms of employees. Needed a lot of work in terms of setup and that kind of thing, which I thought I think I can do this. And joined Home House.
Yeah.
About 4.5 years at Home House.
Yeah, I remember that move happening as well.
Yeah.
Great business, really great, quite a unique,
super unique
private members club.
Yeah.
But also, again, surrounded by, certainly from the outside looking in, a group of people who are just really, really focused on making it as good as it can be. Yeah. And whatever that means behind the scenes to make it happen.
No, they love that business. They love it. It's a lifestyle business in that sense. I mean, we're running a business, and it's not all, fun and games in that sense, but very much invested in that business, because members come back every day. So, and you work in that same building, you share the same space. So you get to know members just by being around, because it's the same similar customer set that comes in every day. So you become part of that fabric.
Yeah.
And the building's amazing. It's like going to work in a museum. It was just beautiful.
That's one of those where you go upstairs and then across a bit and then down some stairs and then you might get to the vicinity of where you need to be.
Yeah. You're looking for the loo and you're in the kitchen. Yeah. It was just, and it was beautiful. Beautiful environment to work in. People some of the staff have been there for, I think at that time, like 18, 20 years, some of them, but some of them brand new. So working through that. In some ways, it was like turning an oil tanker to try and change something.
Right.
In other ways, it was nice and fresh and there was an appetite to do stuff. So, yeah, I had a great time at Home House and learnt a lot working with different people.
I was going to say, because, again, here you are in different business, similar size, but not without its own unique set of challenges and things that need to be fixed / changed / whatever. So, again, there's a kind of running theme through your career so far that you like to test yourself.
Yeah, no, of course, and it's not wildly uncomfortable, so it's okay. It's familiar. You've got familiarities there, but we say here at Artfarm, if you can manage ambiguity, you'll get on really well here. So that's kind of interview question number 2. Is that, how are you with? Tell me a bit about yourself, and secondly, how are you with ambiguity?
Right.
Because we're trying to fix that, and as we're getting bigger, we have to, and there's things that we're putting in place and everything. But that sense of ambiguity is just fun, and it's different. And as long as you're on the right path with the right people in the right way, in a positive culture, it's not toxic and negative or anything. It's not bad ambiguity. It's not knowing. But, there's an element of fun. So to that point of, I didn't think I could be a HR manager when I was a HR manager. Well, actually I could, because I did know. And actually, if you just trust yourself a little bit to step a little bit further, then you do know. And if you don't know, you can learn. Because nobody ever woke up knowing how to do everything.
No, indeed. This comes up more and more under discussion. Yeah. Actually, that it's just a very simple principle around the fact that actually, as humans, we really don't know a lot about anything. No. And when you kind of realise that, it's a liberating thought, because then you can welcome in a bit of chaos. Yeah. You can welcome in the moments whereby you're out of your depth, because I'll take some learning from this. Yeah.
And you can say to your colleagues, I'm out of my depth here, and they'll go, me too. Or they'll go, okay, well, I know how I can help you. Yeah. Which is framing, isn't it?
Yeah, and totally, and that's all about the culture allowing you to do that as well, of course.
Yeah, you'll
have, regrettably, there are still lots of businesses out there who, if you are that honest with somebody, then you're showing the door. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that this is a business that's very, very dynamic. So in whatever form that looks like. Yeah. And there's always going to be stuff that happens that's completely out of your control. Yeah. But like everything, right, it's how you respond to that.
Yeah. And we know why we're doing what we're doing. We're upholding the values and the intent of this business and our owners, and we can do things, and we can do right things, we do wrong things, but if you do it the right way with the right intention, I see that's what my job is to try and just make sure we deliver it in the manner that our owners would approve of, at least. Yeah. But that's important, because you are creating something different and something new, but at the same time you've got your values, and you know what Artfarm should do.
Yeah, but equally your part to play in that as well, and your personal values have to be aligned to what the business is trying to achieve.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. And I'm all about, look, have fun at work. It's food and drink. We are not curing cancer. There are people that do, and that's amazing, but we're not doing that. We're making sure that people have a great time in our venues and properties. So that's hugely important. But also my moral compass is really quite strong. So, when it comes to the rules and when it comes to the non-negotiables, we have to uphold those, and that's the balance. Yeah. So I think I've got that balance. I think my team, we've got that balance. We're all very like-minded, brilliant team across HR and L&D. And I'm hoping we do that well.
Yeah. We've kind of moved forward a little bit in the fullness of that discussion.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But there's something happened at Home House. Well, not at Home House.
No, not at Home
And
House.
will remember this. I'm sure you remember it way better than I do. But I remember that you and I were scheduled to go out for dinner. Yeah. And maybe on the Friday or something like that. And then I got a message from you out of nowhere saying, is there any chance that we could postpone? I was involved in something that happened earlier that week. Yeah. Would you like to tell everybody what that was?
Yeah, totally. So I was having 6 years ago now, had the best day out with my best friend in London, who also works in hospitality and works for D&D. still. And we had the best day out. We went to Borough Market in the morning. We went and had a look round. We were then scheduled to walk over the O2, you know, that thing you can do.
Yeah.
Crackers.
Yeah, done it.
And have you? Yeah, it's quite good fun. Go up there and
I'm scared of the heights. It's all right.
And then just walk back down again. Great. Here's my money.
Indeed.
And we had such a good time in the morning where we met. I live in North London. She lives in sort of like Kingston area. It was like, should we go back to Borough Market and get some food? Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. So we had some food, some wine. Got to a certain point of that evening. Should we have some more wine or should we go home? It was like, it's Saturday night. Let's have some more wine.
It's not going to hurt.
Exactly. What harm can it do?
Jesus.
Lol. So, yes. I mean, we're laughing now, but it's been quite the journey. So, you know, around 9-10 o'clock, I forget now. It's funny, it's like an anecdotal story that because of time moves on, I sort of forget bits of it, which it was very clear in my mind when it happened and a year or two after. But now it's quite a nice, pleasurable thing to have forgotten bits. So it's actually I'm finding this whole process quite amusing. Right. Weird.
Whatever works.
Whatever works for you. It's the therapy. Yeah. So essentially, chaos ensued. People running, screaming through the market, didn't know what was going on. It was a week after the Ariana Grande bombing up in Manchester. Right. I knew something not nice was happening and we had to move. We ran through the back of, it was a Arabica restaurant, I think it was called, next to the Black and Blue restaurant, which got a little bit of PR at the time because some people sadly lost their lives, I think, or certainly injured, sort of stab wounds and stuff. We then ran through the back of the restaurant. I face planted the floor, skidded across, took a chunk out of my arm, which was wonderful, but recovered quite well after that. We hid behind a van. We heard gunshots, didn't know what was going on. First instinct was there's people shooting people in the restaurant. So a bit like the Paris situation. Yeah. It was terrifying. We then were welcomed into the back of another restaurant that was further down into the market. And we hid there for about 5.5, 6 hours, I would say. Right. Utterly terrifying.
Not having a clue as to what's going on.
Not a clue. Yeah. Not a clue. And there's only, the media doesn't catch up in time. You're so scared to make a peep of a noise. There was about 6 of us that were in this sort of, it's like the kitchen area of a restaurant, their office, basically. And we hid out there and we could see on the CCTV armed police officers, you know, with the guns and the head torch. Yeah. But we didn't know that they were police officers. You can imagine the fear. Yeah. We were trembling. I mean, we were in complete and utter shock. We rang the police a few times, 999, tried to ask if they could let somebody know that we were there. It was chaos. The emergency services were in chaos. It was just absolutely nuts. And it was luckily that I think it was probably about 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30, that one of the people that we were with saw a police officer outside the front of the restaurant and had the courage to put his hands up sort of in the air and attract attention. And then at that point we were sort of ushered out of the restaurant, but we were searched out of the restaurant. You know, it was one by one at gunpoint. Right. Which you understand, the police have a job to do.
And not helping abating the terror at this moment in time.
Yeah,
probably.
I mean, we were just wrecks, really, essentially. Yeah. And we had nothing. We had left bags and stuff in the restaurant, in the first restaurant we were in. We were just, you know, my arm was bleeding. It was just crazy. And then we were told we walked through the market that would just look like a war zone, and sort of under the cordon, and off you go. Right, which is bloody remarkable. I actually did an event a couple of years later because I started to do a bit of campaigning on this and started working with my local MP, which we haven't got time for, maybe phase 2. But I did a Q&A in front of a load of police officers and just sort of said that everything else was brilliant apart from that in terms of the care and everything else. It was just like we had to walk. And luckily, Suzanne, GM at South Place Hotel, who's a dear friend, she lives in Butler's Wharf area. So I called her. She just had a baby, and so she was awake. And she texted me earlier that night to say, "Hey, I'm okay." And I said, "I'm not," because that's her neighbouring. That's her neighbourhood. And I said, "I'm not. We're here. I'm with Tracy." She's like, "Oh my God." So I was in touch with her all the way through, and then we went to her house, and then sort of patched me up and got in a cab and went home. Got home about 5:30 in the morning, but it was incredible.
Yeah.
And then I thought I would just go to work on Monday. I thought that was a good idea.
Right.
Until I realised that I had full-blown PTSD, couldn't cope with the noise, anybody walking quickly, running.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm
crazy.
not surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of us, I suppose, unless you've been through something like that, can really ever comprehend
That's crazy.
how you're going to react, how you're going to be in the moment, and all of these things. I think the vast majority of us would love to say that we'd be the big hero, but I think most of us would put our tail between our legs and scarp her as quickly as we can. The reason why I wanted to talk about this, one, you cleared it to talk about as well. I didn't want to put you in a situation that you were uncomfortable with.
No, totally.
But two is, for me, it's there's two things. What changed for you after that? And the second thing being, like, how did you recover? Like, how did you get past it and beyond that?
I mean, I think a couple of things changed at that point in terms of my outlook on life and how fragile it was. And I'm not being dramatic to say this, I genuinely thought I was going to die. The only time, and I hope to God the only time I feel like that ever, and I don't want anybody to feel like that, because we did not know. It was the utmost fear. It was just there. I went through some therapy, and actually somebody said to me, the therapist said to me when I thought, I'm never going to get out of this, and she said, but you changed that night, didn't you? And I said, yes, I did. And she says, you've proven to yourself that you can change. I said, yes, I did. I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, all right, smart ass.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're paying you the big bucks for.
Yeah.
But that helped me. Because, yes, I can change again. I can. And it did take some time. It took a year or two, maybe a bit more, of in and out of the right sort of, a bit of therapy, a bit of self-care, a bit of relapsing and, everything else. And it affected part of my life that I didn't think. So I wouldn't sleep with the window open at night. I thought that my life was in danger. I developed a fear of flying. There's loads of things that kind of came on because of this PTSD. Fireworks have never been the same.
Right.
So, but at the same time, the industry in which I work in and have loved, and Borough Market was always my favourite place to go. Over weekends, my family came down from up north, we'd always go, have a mooch around, buy some ingredients, go home, cook something. Yeah. It was always really...
special place.
It was really special, and it is special.
Yeah.
And I'll be damned if anybody's going to take that away from me.
Yeah.
Like, completely. And, it got to the point that I would challenge myself to go to a restaurant. It was quite nice, actually, that I worked at Home House at the time, because you couldn't get in if you weren't a member. And I don't think we had any... suspect people on the membership list. So it gave me a little bit of security there that I bought a scooter. I didn't use public transport. I tried to use practical ways to get through it. You've got to keep getting out there. But it was my love and passion for this industry that I thought I can't not be in restaurants and pubs and bars and how could I? It's part of my DNA.
Yeah.
And it helped me, and it was my own therapy that I can now go into a restaurant and sit down not facing the door. Now I do it instinctively.
Right.
Like, not instinctively, like...
There's things that we all take for granted, really.
Yeah.
But, given what you went through, I can only imagine even that first night that you went back out for a meal, of what you must have been going through.
Yeah, I mean, it was... Any noise, the noise of a chair scraping on the floor.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that would just bring back so much.
Right.
Anything that was dropped. Anywhere I went in terms of a restaurant, a bar, I had an escape plan in my head as soon as I went in. Right. I knew exactly where I was going to run to, what my escape, and if I wasn't comfortable, we'd have to move. And it was that, but you do all of that in a business meeting, not showing anything.
Yeah.
Like the whole swan legs, analogy.
Yeah.
And then slowly, and that's what I said to you earlier, it was 6 years ago, and my goodness, time flies, but thank goodness it does, because the time is the healer. Yeah. And they say that, and it's a cliche, but it really is. It
totally is, yeah.
It's repetition, it's time, and it's being very focused on not letting this define me. No way. So, that sort of what's helped. And it's still now, I get little bits every now and again, and it'll be something random, but it's that whole mindfulness thing, isn't it? And I'm not a mindfulness person because I get distracted too easily and I can't do yoga. But at the same time, it's acknowledging it and letting it go.
100 ideas just come through.
Yeah, exactly.
Just in the middle. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, put the washing on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the extent of my ideas.
Yeah.
But acknowledging it and letting it go, and just hoping to goodness nothing else happens like that to the world and for anybody.
Yeah.
It's hideous.
But I suppose as well it teaches you a lesson that maybe you didn't want at the time or anything, but it teaches you that you are way more resilient than you think you are.
Yeah.
And that's a general statement for the human race, as it were. And I know that I'm getting philosophical, but I can't really get through a podcast without doing that. So
it's Friday afternoon.
Indeed, yes. Head's already in the pub.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for sharing that,
no,
because
it's
I
fine.
think
Important.
there's great power in overcoming adversity from a story perspective, because I think ultimately, what's the saying? Adversity comes for us all. So you kind of, it's not that you should be ready for it, but you should expect it at some point. And there's a massive meter of difference between some adversity and others. But it comes back to what we've been talking about through this a couple of times, is that we don't know how resilient we are, we don't know how adaptable we are until we're put in the situation where we need to be.
Exactly.
And then you learn everything that you need to know about yourself
really quickly.
Yeah.
But I will also say that there was a chap, Sebastian, who was a chef at Coq d'Argent with D&D, that lost his life on that day.
Really?
And he'd come over the bridge from Coq d'Argent after his shift to watch the football. It was a Champions League final, and he was one of the people that sadly lost their life that day.
Bless. Yeah.
So, and that's our world. That's our industry. That's how real it is.
Yeah.
So they affected people enjoying the customers, but also some of our people.
Yeah.
Not good.
No.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, not good.
Anyway,
yes.
Let's move on.
On a lighter note.
But thank you. Thank you for sharing.
It's important.
So we haven't yet covered off the move to Artfarm. In terms of, we obviously know that you're here now, but it was from Home House to Artfarm that you came. So how did that all come about?
Well, it was one of those things that I wasn't particularly looking for a move, and in early 2020, I was approached for the role here, and I'd sort of had a couple of chats with Andrew, who's the managing director at Home House, the Home House collection now, and in terms of what's next, but I was quite happy and whatever. So I came for a speculative chat, as you do. Just that, speculative.
No harm in that.
Yeah, no harm in a chat. Here we are. And I just really enjoyed the chat. I met with Jonathan, the CFO, who was still the CFO, and Adam, who was the ops manager at the time. And I just thought these guys looked really interesting. I'd never heard of you before. Like Artfarm was a funny name for a business. At the time, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
So it was just completely strange. And then I had a couple of meetings with the guys, and I thought this is quite interesting. And then a few things happened all at the same time. So there was a little flu flying around in 2020. Sort of February, early March time, to which I was quite bold about saying to my HR team, it's nothing. Don't worry, it will never take off.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Yeah. So that's another time that was probably a little bit wrong. So that was sort of happening. And then at the same time, myself and my partner, we knew that we wanted to start a family. And we tried and it hadn't really worked out. So I called Jonathan and I said, look, I really like you guys at Artfarm. The pandemic thing is kind of hotting up a bit. I've got work to do here. And then secondly, we're sort of planning to have a family, and I just want a full disclosure so it's probably not the right time to move.
Mm.
To which he then called back and said, well, actually, because you've said that, babies are the future, and we'd like you to come and work with us, but after you've done what you need to do COVID-wise at a Home House. And that for me was like, wow. Well, you work in hospitality, and it's okay for me to go on maternity leave.
Mm.
Yes.
Or maybe within
soon.
a year of arrival.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
And so I accepted the job. And in hindsight, it was probably just the best time for Home House, because the pandemic was tough and they had to cut back a little bit. I worked with them and the team, and they had a brilliant team and they looked after all their people. And I sense checked with Artfarm that they had good intentions to, you know, sort of do whatever they could to protect as many people as possible in COVID. And then I joined in June, working from home in an office, just for a different company.
Yeah.
In my dining room, actually.
So you put the laptop down one night.
Yeah, just put a different one on and then, joined a different Teams call. It was quite strange.
Right. Yeah, change clothes.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even have to do
that anyway. But
didn't have to do that. Different people, they didn't know.
Indeed, that's
been wearing the sweatshirt all week.
Yeah. And here we are, 3 years.
3 years on. So 3 years on. My son's nearly 2. Teddy, he's a little whirlwind, and we've gone from strength to strength. Opened another couple of businesses, and we've got another fair few more in the pipeline.
Yeah.
So my team, I think when I started was 4 people. I think there's 12 of us now, and we acquired the Groucho Club last year. Yeah, great. Just really
very
positive.
Interesting time to be with a company like this who are absolutely not sitting on their hands.
No, and having a kid at the same time.
Yeah, but again, that
we've covered that I'm a glutton for punishment.
Indeed, yes, it comes back to there's been a running theme all the way through this that you like your challenges to be uphill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's the achievement, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. But as you say, you then get the benefit of looking back in 10 years' time and going, look what we did.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I genuinely believe that I work for the best hospitality company there is.
Right.
And that for me is success. From pubs all the way through, everything I've done, I've got acknowledgement and such fond memories to people that I've worked with before. But this one is really different. It's unique. I love it. Absolutely love it.
That's brilliant. Yeah, and ultimately that's what, when you get a bit older, as we're both moving that way.
Maybe. That's what's important.
Yeah, do you know, I was obsessed with success in my 30s around what that looked like,
Same.
And actually, nobody can tell you what success looks like. You've got to go and find it yourself. But the success for me now is just being happy. Yeah. That sounds really, really flippant and throwaway. But it's true. Actually, what can I do every day to make sure that I'm bettering myself, but I'm still smiling and happy? It's just a nicer state to be in.
Yeah. I used to judge my success by salaries and job titles. Stopped that ages ago. Yeah. These things are important, don't get me wrong, but yeah.
Yeah, but that would be all and end all, are they?
No, there's a much bigger piece to it.
Yeah. Great stuff. Well,
amazing.
One more thing before we go.
Yeah.
Always like to ask people if they've got any funny stories.
Oh God.
Excuse me. There was something that I think you wrote in your notes around the fact that you seem to get spooked.
No, because my team, my team find this hilarious. That the first thing is, I asked a couple of people. Liz Cave was one of them, actually. I was like, okay, what's a funny story that's happened in my career that I can actually talk about? And she was like, now we're challenged, because we could have a whole different podcast.
I mean, that would be a great podcast
on other things, from private members clubs to various other things. But so in my role, just very briefly, my role with Artfarm, we have to travel a little bit.
Yeah.
And some of the style of property that we have, we have an 18th century farmhouse in Somerset that is very rustic, beautiful, but very rustic in its appearance. Also, the Five Farms Hotel, that the first time I stayed there was in the pandemic, that I could only permitted to travel for business because we were doing a reopening. Mm. And at one point, there was myself and the maintenance guy were the only people in this hotel.
Right.
So there's a bit of a recurring theme that in some of our properties, I just get spooked, and my team just think it's hilarious. That's all it is. And then more recently, I was lucky enough to stay in a private cottage that I probably can't say too much about, but our owners love a bit of taxidermy, and they love a bit of exactly.
That's a great setup for anything.
And the art world is as you'll see, very varied. And it was a great privilege to be able to stay in this cottage. But the first night I shared with my colleague Gemma, the first night she arrived before me, the day before me, and she was like, and it was up in the hills, like there's nothing around, pitch black Scotland, just you and a Highland pony. Yeah. And she was absolutely terrified. So the next day that I came up to join her, I was trying to style it out, but we did buy a couple of bottles of wine for the evening. Yeah. We kind of got through it, but it was quite terrifying. But a lot of the time with a beautiful location, particularly remote, I just get spooked. I get the heebie-jeebies all the time and just think, oh God, this is like from
so
a
you're
horror
definitely
film.
a city girl now then.
I'm definitely a city girl.
Yeah.
I need life, action, people. I'm not a remote type of person. I find all that stuff utterly terrifying.
Yeah.
Especially with taxidermy in the room.
I mean, that's fair. I think that
taxidermy
is a little bit freaky anyway.
There's a lot of death
Yeah.
in some of our hotels, and and it's it looks
you
great.
You got a badger looking at you in the corner of the room.
Yeah, and a skull, and we have a wall at the Fife. We call it the Wall of Death, which is just all the stag skulls, and altogether it looks beautiful, but it's what it is.
It's death.
So it's death, which is great. So it's just I just get spooked very easy. They find it hilarious.
Yes. Well, I look forward to the next spooking of
I
Natalie
don't.
Tait. There's your book title.
Yeah, exactly.
Great stuff. Well, thank you
so
very,
much.
very much for coming on and sharing your story.
No, it's my pleasure. It's been fun.
It's been great to catch up and do this. Long overdue, but
yeah, totally.
Hey, that's the hospitality life.
That's cool.
And wish you guys all the very best with the next phase of a continued monumental growth.
Yeah, thank you. It's amazing. Thanks, Phil.
No worries.
Brilliant.
Take care. Bye.
And there we have it. What an incredibly rich story Natalie has, climbing the ranks from humble beginnings to fighting her way through adversity, but also proving just how important the industry of hospitality is in so many ways. We'll be back as usual at 8 PM next Wednesday for another story from hospitality, so until then, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.